Hey guys, what is up? This is the Leafs Convo podcast, the holiday Merry Christmas edition for Oakridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. I'm Norman James along with Michael P. Augello. The Maple Leafs coming off a wild 8-6 win over the Carolina Hurricanes at Scotiabank Arena. Another tale of two games, Michael P. A nightmare for the coaches, a dream for the fans in attendance. Wow.
Good evening or good afternoon or good morning, Norm. It's funny because I am a hockey fan and I love entertaining, exciting hockey. And there's no doubt that that game was entertaining and exciting. It's also aggravating and infuriating in some ways because this team, and granted, they're going to have half a season to sort of get the idea of what needs to be done. But this will not fly. This type of hockey will not fly in the playoffs. I don't care. You know, it didn't work for Pittsburgh with Mario Lemieux. It didn't work for Edmonton with Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier. Those teams had to change their ways when it came to the postseason and play more of a responsible defensive style to be able to achieve the ultimate goal. And you know, in that game yesterday, the Leafs go out to a 3-0 lead, play really great, chase James Reimer, and then sort of fall into a slumber, allow Carolina to come back, then allow Carolina to score 3 goals in 64 seconds to take a 5-3 lead, and then they open it up and catch up and take the lead and win the game. That's all fine and good. I loved it. The skill of Marner, the skill of Matthews is incredible, but they cannot continue to have these brain cramps or vapor locks for 4 or 5 minutes where they give up 2 or 3 goals. If they do that in the playoffs, they will lose.
Let's make it clear, Mike. You're not crapping on the team. That was effervescent, the chemistry and the synergy and the productivity of Marner and Matthews. Some of the greatest stuff you're going to see this season. But this team certainly has to evolve from a loosey-goosey style of play into one that is more locked down if it's going to do anything in the playoffs. So we'll take what we got. 5 straight wins. The Leafs moving up the standings pretty rapidly, now a plus 11 for the season. That's a huge indicator of a team that's on the rise. The Bruins, 9 points ahead of the Maple Leafs in the Atlantic. Look, it's Boston or bust for the Maple Leafs in terms of who they're trying to overcome this season. It's just a fact, right? Let's talk a little bit about Marner and Matthews. Reading comments from fans, a lot of people feeling like the shackles are off this team because, Mike Babcock had it ingrained in the system that it would be Matthews and Neal Anders flanking him and then whomever else on the other side of the line to be blamed if things didn't work out for these guys. But now it's Marner and Matthews, and these two dudes are just totally electric. Is this too much of a good thing?
Well, I don't know how long it will last, because if you read between the lines of Sheldon Keefe's comments after the game, putting 2 star players like that together at times is necessary. And I think we'll see it more under him than we would have ever seen it under Babcock, because Babcock essentially just said, no, I'm going to keep them separate because I need, they both drive offense, and I need Marner to drive offense on one line and Matthews to do it on the other. But in little drips and drabs, it's a good thing when your team is struggling to score. Then put the 2 together and let them fly around, and they can get you points that you probably wouldn't get if you didn't do it. The problem is, on a regular basis, taking Marner and putting him with Matthews, you're sort of putting all your eggs in one basket. Now Tavares can drive offense on another line, but we saw yesterday they played him with Mikheyev and Spezza. That worked for a time at the beginning of the game. That line was on the ice for a couple goals against. And then when they tried putting Kapanen and Nylander with Tavares, it was ineffective. So I think that you need Marner with Tavares driving one line, and then Matthews with Nylander or somebody else driving the other line, and then you have a 2-line attack, which is much more formidable than having even 2 of the best players in the league in Matthews and Marner. I think it's better to have 2 lines that can score than 1 pairing that can score.
From community, the question: how much Marner Matthews do you require? 129 votes. 48% say now, more, always. 38% say until it stops working. 12% say here and there, kind of like your idea, Mike. And a measly 2% believe that Matthews belongs to Nylander.
I don't know about that one, but yeah, I think the most effective method that and Keefe indicated this after the game. He likes to experiment. He likes to move things around. I mean, putting Spezza on the line with
Mm-hmm.
Tavares at the beginning of the game. I mean, they lined a couple shifts earlier in the season, but he did it because at least Keefe said that it was because Spezza's kids were in the crowd for the next generation game, and having him start. It's what 180 degrees from the head coach benching him for the
Mm-hmm.
season opener against the team he played against to having him be in the starting lineup because his kids were in the crowd. So, but it resulted in a goal. It worked, but I don't know if that can work effectively going forward long term, because Spezza is probably a 10 to 11 minute player, and Tavares is somebody who's going to play 20 minutes a night.
There's something really cool about these generational talents coming out of the GTA, all playing together now for the Maple Leafs. Spezza, this guy was the shit coming out of the OHL, played for way too many teams, in my opinion, but he was the second overall pick, I believe. John Tavares, first overall pick in 2009. So, I mean, how many years between those guys? 5 or 6? And then Mitch Marner, obviously a 2015, 16 pick. Sorry, guys, I don't have all my information in front.
15,
Yeah, but
2015.
But again, you're seeing all these hot shots who came through the midget ranks and the greater Toronto melting pot of hockey talent, and now all playing for the beloved blue and white. It's something. It's a nice story. It's cool to see, and wouldn't that be awesome if these dudes got through the first round and went on a deep run? There would be so many stories that you could emphasize, but certainly that would be one of them. And obviously, Jason Spezza, a Leaf killer for so many years, now back playing a support role, and I think he does it really well. You saw how excited he was to score that first goal, and when I saw that, I thinking to myself, you know what, this is going to be an interesting game. Maybe James Reimer stands on his head. And 14 goals later, what an absolute gong show. Austin Matthews with the spinorama behind the back pass to Mitch one time into the net, and then Mitch, a few seconds later, off the face-off, breaking in and scoring. I mean, that is electric stuff. That is big league, AAA, superstar stuff. It was on display. It was part of a bit of a mishmash of a hockey game, but as much as we get frustrated with the way this team plays defensively, that kind of activity on the ice should lead people to believe there's more in store, and it's going to be a lot of fun going forward.
Yeah, and I have to say, though, on that Marner breakaway goal off the faceoff, he split 2 defensemen, one of them being Jake Gardner.
Oh, my God.
Just I
get PTSD talking about James. I get PTSD talking about Jake Gardner. Going back, if you're new to the podcast, OGs and converts, go way back to like spring of 18. Anyway, he's moved on, and so have we.
I just look at, and obviously Keefe after the game had a realistic outlook. I mean, he essentially said, that everything went as planned, sort of sarcastically. But they'll take the victory. They're in second place at the break. But the race is very tight. You have 5 teams within 4 points of each other. The Leafs are going to have to continue to win. They start the second half or the after break against New Jersey, and then the Rangers here back to back. So they need, I would say, 3 of a possible 4 points there. They need to keep the ball rolling because they have to overcome that early slow start.
But Mike, if they win 80% of their games, but they don't win the way you want them to win, or we believe they need to win to be prepared for the playoffs, does any of it matter, right? Or if they get a wild card spot but have started to lock it down and become one of the better teams in terms of goals against, is that something you're hoping for more than this team just beating the crap out of everybody than losing in 7 to Boston again?
Yeah, I mean, I think the organization realizes that they have to play a certain way to be able to have success in the postseason. You cannot outscore. Like, I mean, there are very few examples of teams outscoring other teams in wide open offense in the playoffs, and especially the teams that they're going to come up against in a potential first round match. It may not be Boston if Boston wins the division, but if it's Montreal they play a defensive style with Carey Price. If it's Florida with Bobrovsky and now Joel Quenneville, the winner of 3 Stanley Cups. If it's Buffalo, I mean, who knows? If it's Tampa Bay, who had the best goals against or second best goals against, I think, in the NHL behind the Islanders last year, they're going to have to play a style that they right now are not accustomed to. And that's where I think Sheldon Keefe knows what they have to do. And it's a question of between now and April, them being able to win enough games to get in the playoffs and play the type of way that they're going to have to play to win.
This is the Leafs Convo podcast for Oakridge Ford. Thank you very much for your support of this podcast endeavor. I know you're listening on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, and we thank you so much for spending time with us. We keep doing what we do, and you guys keep supporting us stronger than ever. It's amazing. Brad Randall, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the new line combos. We did touch on it. So, Mike, you do think, though, when the dust settles and all of this hysteria dies down, it'll be Marner and Tavares, Matthews and Neal Anders, 1-2, flip a coin.
Yeah, I think it's going to go back to the way the combos were. I think they may move around some different left wingers. I mean, clearly Hyman is the most effective left winger, even though he's not a big scorer, although I think he has 8 goals in 18 games. He's effective with Matthews and he's effective with Tavares because he goes in the corners and he's defensively responsible. So he's a good complement to both. If you could have 2 or 3 Zach Hymans, I would take them right now. But maybe you get a chance of having a guy like Mikheyev, who's played much better of late after a long goalless streak, playing in that top 6 because of his size and his speed. And I think his finish is better than it's been lately. So, he probably could end up with 15 to 20 goals, but maybe there's an opportunity there to move Andreas Janssen when he comes back down to a lower line, or maybe, this is where Dubas explores the possibility of trading somebody under contract for something that will help them in another area like a defenseman.
Matthew, don't call me Tony Tanti. The Leafs only had 4 hits yesterday versus Carolina. Do you think this lack of hitting will allow them to win a playoff series?
I think it's a factor. I mean, if you see teams like Boston and Washington and what they were doing yesterday, where Tom Wilson speared David Pasternak in the junk, and then there was basically a Pier 6 brawl. It's going to get rough in the playoffs, and I think you can play positionally. I mean, Babcock's teams in Detroit, they were not a tough group, but they had guys like Nicholas Kronwall who would make some hits. They need players to play physically, but I think the MO of this team is to avoid physical contact. I don't think that can work, but that seems to be the MO right now, and they're going to stick with it.
Severino Cudicillo. Hi, Norman. Hi, Mike. Loving the play of our Maple brothers. I really think there's something special here, and dreaming that a championship all of a sudden doesn't seem so far-fetched. The Raptors did it, Mike. Maybe the Leafs can do the double.
Hey, anything is possible. I look at this team and I look at the way that they played over. I mean, they're 11-4 under Sheldon Keefe.
Yeah,
they have
amazing.
more wins. They have more wins under Keefe in a month than they had under Babcock for the first 2 months. So it's been a remarkable turnaround. There are still some areas that need to be addressed, but their special teams have been fantastic. I believe their power play is first overall since he took over. Their penalty killing is in the top 5. So they're getting great special teams. Anderson is playing his best hockey, and they're scoring goals in bunches. What's not to be happy about?
Make no mistake, Sheldon Keefe is here to coach the Maple Leafs, not Maple Leafs. You know what I'm saying, Mike? Team first. And he's already set the precedent, which is amazing. Brandon Foster wants to know, what's the biggest surprise in terms of the Maple Leafs for 2019, so this season?
Well, I'll pick an individual. I would say Mikheyev, but the guy who I think gets a honorable mention. First, I'll say Mikheyev because you didn't know what he was going to be coming out of the KHL. The recovery of Zach Hyman coming off an ACL tear and basically not missing a beat, he's been great. But honestly, over the last few weeks, Pierre Engvall, I think, has proved that he's an NHLer and maybe proved he's a top 9 guy because he's big, he's fast, he's rangy, he's got that long reach like a condor. I guess that's my nickname for him. I probably won't it won't grab on with everybody, but he's an unusual player, and his unusual traits have really helped them. He's great on the penalty kill, and he's been scoring goals 5-on-5 as well, and he got an empty netter against the Hurricanes. So he's a keeper, and they can't send him down, and I don't think they're going to send him down.
Without shipping William Nylander out of town, does the emergence of guys like Engvall and Mikheyev and Timashov and Bracco being ready to go in the AHL put a little bit of pressure on the organization in terms of having a guy like William Nylander. We know that he's a pretty good value with the Maple Leafs, but that also means he'd be good value in trade. So this comes down to an X's and O kind of move. What's best for the organization with these guys who potentially could take Nylander's spot when it comes to what he produces coming up pretty fast here? Does that put the organization in a tough position?
I think it puts them in a sort of fortuitous position because depth is always a good thing. I mean, if it's not Nylander, which I think it could be because of the fact that he's making $7 million and, he's on pace to score 30 goals. So if in the summer they decided to go that direction, they would get good value for him. It also puts the pressure on guys like Kapanen and on Johnsson. They're making over $3 million a year. Johnsson's had some injury problems. Kapanen is not fit in on certain lines and then fit in playing on the right side rather than the left side. I mean, it's been sort of an up and down year for him, but I know that there's a lot of interest in him because he's a speedy player and he's a talented player. They're under contract, they're under long-term contracts. If they decided they like the depth that they have and think that they can survive without Kapanen or without Johnsson, then they could trade one of them. It's a good position to have that kind of depth.
Yeah, the organization doesn't revolve around Nylander. It doesn't even really, maybe revolves a little bit around Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. But again, team over individual players. If the situation is right, and fan base be damned, unfortunately, the Maple Leafs will make that deal, right? The Maple Leafs will make that deal at the end of the day. Joe Slater wants to know, Nylander, great player, question mark?
No. I think he's a complimentary player. I think he's a very good player, but a great player is somebody like Marner who scored 4 points in the third period, or somebody like Matthews who makes a spinorama move like he did, or that goal against Buffalo where he went through everybody. Mm-hmm. Nylander very rarely has done something that is just like jaw-dropping, awe-inspiring. He's a very good player. He's a really good complimentary player. He's talented. He doesn't bring it every day, and he doesn't show it every day, but he's got the talent. That's. I think he's a very good player, not a great player.
But since he's the poster child for all things analytics, doesn't that mean he's quietly great? Because his constituency builds him up to be something beyond what most people who are just judging him with an eye test believe him to be. So is he not quietly? I mean, all of these guys can be great. And I think William Nylander can be great and will be great at times. And what I'm hoping is when the top stars are gripping it too tight and there's a bit of leadership needed from that second tier guy, it's a William Nylander who needs to step up, right? It's a Tyson Barrie who needs to step up, a Zach Hyman. So I'm hoping these guys can be great towards the common goal that is getting into the playoffs, past the first round, and going all the way to win a Stanley Cup. Michael, let's wrap up this holiday edition of the Leafs Convo with your last word.
Merry Christmas to all our listeners, and hope you have a good Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and Boxing Day. And as for me, I can't wait till the Leafs get back in action on Friday so we can get back to hockey.
You got it. Mike, Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Talk to you soon.